stood, and as all of us did as members, to defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Arkansas. When I have, even though I know you don't agree, but I have in my heart of hearts, and when William Jennings Bryan, I read a quote the other day, says we need to talk instead of lip to ear, heart to heart. And I think he was right about that. But how do I deal with that when I feel that, and others feel that are more legally, but better legal scholars than I, that this violates the law?
Not being an attorney either, I have consulted with scholars who are immigration scholars across the country, and taken the time to do my homework over these last, 6 years. There have been changes that have happened since the Attorney General's ruling, because when the Attorney General ruled in 2005, here's something the Attorney General said in his opinion, that there is an equal protection question regarding this bill. The bill appears to make an undocumented high school graduate eligible for exemption from the non-resident portion of the total tuition, regardless of whether or not he or she is currently an Arkansas resident. On the other hand, another student who is not currently an Arkansas resident, but who otherwise meets the requirements of the bill, would not be allowed to get in-state tuition. That's not what this bill says. This bill says that if the undocumented students get in-state tuition, and by virtue of meeting the criteria of what's in the federal law, which says that every other student who meets that same criteria will get in-state tuition. At the time that this Attorney General's opinion was issued, there was a challenge that was happening in Kansas had not been settled. Since the issuance of this opinion, that's been settled in Kansas. And so I can appreciate that this is what was said in the Attorney General's opinion, but since that time we've got that issue resolved, and it does not comport with what the bill actually does. But we know we have to follow the federal law and give the same thing to anybody else who meets that criteria.
Has now Governor, then Attorney General VD, changed his position on this, your proposed legislation, or legislation of that type?
Not to my knowledge has he changed his position.
And you heard on the floor the other day, Senator David Johnson, who's somebody the other day, I think one of the committee members, said he had a 100-pound brain. And I thought that's pretty good for a lawyer. and you heard... where do you think the flaws are in Senator Johnson's argument? And again, the other question I'd ask is that you mentioned that it's on appeal. Yes. To me, when something's on appeal until it's finally settled by the United States Supreme Court, it's not the settled law of the country. Now again, I'm talking law again, but you're not a lawyer either.
Right.
So I'm just guessing at what's right, but that's what I read in the paper.
But Senator Hendren, you are right, because I consulted attorneys about it. I didn't just say it. As a matter of fact, the Supreme Court has not even decided it's going to hear the case. So we don't even know that there is going to even be anybody who's going to listen to the case from the appeals court. And the flaw I see in Senator Johnson's logic, his interpretation of this, is the failure to I don't want to say admit, because this is not a contest here, but the failure to recognize that we cannot skirt the federal law here that says that we're not trying to, and we have written the bill with the federal law in mind, that whatever we give to any student who has graduated from an Arkansas high school for 3 years, federal law requires that we give it to every other student who's graduated from an Arkansas high school who's been here 3 years. We can do no less than that. But the federal law does not say we have to give it to everybody in the country. And he cited the Martinez case in California, and I will remind you that the immigration attorney who was there on the floor with us challenged him at that time that, Senator Johnson, you have to keep reading, because if you stop reading before you get to those 3 important words, scope, duration, and amount, you can draw the conclusions that Senator Johnson drew, but it's difficult to do if you include those three criteria that narrow.
Okay, let me get to my final question. You and I have talked about this before. I think we both agree that the federal government could fix this problem by proper legislation. And we know recently they can pass bills within 10 or 24 hours without even reading them. So we know that that can be done in Washington if they chose to do it with the urgency that you have here. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I certainly would be. It would be great. I don't know if they could pass as quick as you say, but I certainly agree with you that it would be great if Washington dealt with it. And that's why I have to just come down on the side of saying, because Washington hasn't, we're in a bad position, and that's why I say this is not perfect.
My final question is, and this is what I asked those young people the other day, and this is what really terrible. And you stated earlier, and I agree with this, you said we are required by law to educate our youngsters 1 through 12. I agree with that. We all have. But in which law, state or federal, which one did we decide that we're required to keep and the other we're not, for whatever good cause there may be? But is that a slippery slope to which democracy and freedom can be taken away if, for whatever good cause, I decide, well, that law is, I just need to ignore that law? And we've had some of those instances in Arkansas on liability insurance and so forth for vehicles. But would you agree that's a rather dangerous thing if we as citizens disagree with the law, say, well, I choose not to, maybe to ignore that?
I would agree.
I know you do.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that totally, though. But what I don't accept is that that's what we're doing. If that's what we're doing, I would agree. But
would you agree? Would you agree that there are legal minds that perhaps think that then meet some morons like me maybe that agree with those guys?
Well, I don't want to call you there are some folks who've reached a different conclusion, but I have to keep going back to that in 10 states, 11 states, folks have reached a very different conclusion, and it's turned out to be just fine.
Yeah, in 45 states, they've gone busted in their budget, so I don't know whether that's a good criteria or not.
Well, they're educated, and I'll just coincidentally, when we talk about laws, and I am a person who believes in laws. This is, I think I heard this more on the radio. This is that Patrick Henry made his great statement about liberty, give me liberty or give me death. His whole speech about justice, and I think that may be informative to us here today.